The Indie Writers Club podcast is sponsored by Pro Writing Aid. Pro Writing Aid has been my go-to tool for revising and refining my writing since my first book. Built by writers for writers, it's more than just a grammar and spell checker. Pro Writing Aid helps you enhance your story's pacing, plot, characters, settings, and more. It can even provide on-demand developmental feedback on your entire manuscript with its new manuscript analysis and virtual beta reader tools. Get ahead of the competition by heading to prowritingaid.com, sign up for free or use the code IWC15 for a 15% discount off annual subscriptions.
It's the Indie Writers Club with Cara Clare and James Blatch. A place to relax, chat, learn and vent about life as an independent author. Get episode alerts and links at indiewritersclub.com. Now, here's Cara and James.
Welcome to the Indie Writers Club. I am Cara Clare.
And I'm James Blatch. Hello from a very sunny and warm England. We don't get to say that too often, so I'm going to say it.
It is so warm, which is always the way. Literally every year, it's like the self-publishing show guarantee at this point that the week before we have a super heat wave. So it's gloriously sunny, but I'm grumpy about it.
It is saying, so I'm looking at the forecast for the 25th and 26th with 2 days of the show. So the 25th is sunny all day, 25 degrees. 26th, possible rain. But it doesn't get above 37. I was just talking off air. Now, I do think the forecasters these days, if they think there might be something, they exaggerate it. I guess that's because they'd rather say it's going to be torrential rain and it rains a bit than say it's probably going to be okay and it rains and people complain. But I've just been on holiday for 3 nights.
I was just going to say, do you remember that year when we had torrential rain at SPS? But it literally cleared. We had almost like a monsoon level rain in the morning, and everyone was absolutely drenched arriving. But then it cleared by lunchtime and the afternoon was gloriously hot. And by the evening, we were still all standing out there by the Thames on the South Bank.
Yes, it was a proper monsoon, like a torrential downpour for about 10 minutes, but it was just as people were coming in. Anyway, look, it's going to be warm and sunny because that's the law, L-O-R-E, as well as the L-A-W law. Of our show, and we hope we're going to see as many of you there as possible. As you can imagine, we're at DEF CON 2 behind the scenes, so just ahead of that organisation. We'll go backwards and forwards on microphones and lighting and music and stuff like that at the moment, and trying to work out how adding the rental for half a day of 6 microphones costs £692. You have to be so careful with these organisations. If you don't question everything they come back to you with, they just treat you like you're Apple Inc. and that you won't notice another £1,000 on your bill for microphones. And you think, well, I could have bought all those microphones, let alone used them for one day. And they're probably 5-year-old mics that get used in every conference and you can't, we don't know how they justify some of this stuff is. And don't get me started on the catering costs.
I didn't. I was purposefully not getting you started.
Do you know what we're doing? We're actually going to give our helpers on the second day, the workshop day, we're going to give them £20 notes to go out and buy lunch because it's considerably cheaper than saying to the hotel, could you give them a sandwich each? Because there's hotels said, yes, absolutely.
Are you joking?
£99 each for lunch. No, not, well, it wasn't £99, but it was like 49, something like that. Plus VAT. Because that's how much conference catering is. If you want teas, coffees, stuff, it's thousands and thousands of pounds. It's a dismal experience because you start off, they say it's going to be £29,000 to rent this space. Plus there'll be some AV costs and of course there'll be some catering costs. But what you don't realise is those catering costs and AV costs can be the best part of another £29,000. And they should really make that clear at the beginning of the process. And we're sort of well weary of this process now, but I don't know. I mean, it's London, it's convenient, it's crossed our minds to move somewhere that's a little bit cheaper and a little bit more transparent to work in because there's a lot of competition for these spaces in London. But there you go. I don't know, we sort of go through this every year. It is what it is, and we've got good numbers coming. We'll cover our costs for sure. I'm certain we're going to cover our costs. You still don't know. So this is the other thing. I'd like to get all the spreadsheets done at this point, so I turn up on the day knowing where we are. But it's just getting people to confirm. One of the centres. I will stop rattling on about this in a second. One of the centres, and I won't name which one, does this every year, and they say, yeah, we'll give you the AV cost. We'll send you the bill afterwards, and so. After 4 years of this, where we've been a bit shocked by the bill afterwards, I've said to them, this is not how to do things. We would like you to tell us how much it's going to be now before we have the conference. Because if you want to charge us 700 quid for 6 mics, at least we can query it beforehand. We can't do that afterwards. We could goldenly say, well, we won't have those extra mics for the audience. We'll have the compere like me go down into the audience with it. So we're doing that this year, which is why they're going, well, I don't know how we're going to make up these figures before the conference. We'd like to make them up afterwards. But so there you go.
That seems crazy to me because maybe because the way that we do business, things like this always just seem absolutely bonkers. It's like how can you do that? How do you not know until afterwards?
I know. Well, I think what it is that there's different ways of doing business and different pricing models. And we think about this in books all the time and how much we price our books. But I was talking to someone in our industry once who does a very, very high-end product that costs tens of thousands of pounds. And they were telling me that there are people who want to spend that sort of money on the things that you and I would spend a few hundred quid on. They are looking for places to spend £5,000 on. And there's people who have set up to provide that. And as long as they're providing above and beyond quality, but then a huge markup, I guess it's okay. But the conference arenas, we are kind of stepping into the world of big corporates that turn over tens, maybe hundreds of millions of pounds a year. And so for them, they put aside 100 grand to put on a conference during the day. That conference centre is there to make sure they get as close to 100 grand as possible in charging. So they have to whack the charges up on every little item. Whereas we are trying to charge £99 for people to come in, the cheapest we can possibly make it, where it's now almost impossible to provide a cup of tea for that because of it. So it's a kind of, they're set up to charge and benefit from, to milk, however you want to put it, big companies. And we're a small organisation. But there you go. And that's what it is. But I'm only feeling slightly irritable about it because we're in the middle of that now. By the time it comes around, I will have forgotten all of that and I will enjoy the day very much.
And you'll be a little ray of sunshine.
Am I not always a little ray of sunshine? I do need to find my razor. I've lost my razor. It's probably in Aruba or somewhere. I am going to be properly full Ernest Hemingway soon, so I need to change that.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention it. I was thinking, God, you're looking more beardy every week.
Yeah, it makes me look older. It's quite hard to put sun cream on beards.
I wouldn't know.
Hey, my golf was very good in Spain. Really
was
good.
It?
Yeah, I played really well. But I am a sun creature. I just prefer, everything's better for me in the sunshine. I know other people don't. My wife is very Scottish sort of heritage and bursts into flames in the sun. But for me, as you can see how brown I go, although I do definitely have that. If you're looking on YouTube, if you look on YouTube, it's a two-tone.
Well, I'm still very grumpy because obviously I still have broken foot. So my foot is still in this giant moon boot thing and the heat is making it miserable. So, and I'm just stuck on my sofa. So I'm a grumpy person at the moment.
I'd like to be stuck on the sofa for a bit, but probably not as long as
Yeah, the novelty wears off. The novelty wears off by day 10, trust me.
And is Ruben behaving? He's not sort of saying, can I kick your leg, Mummy, just see if it hurts?
I haven't been able to have him. He's having to stay with my ex because I can't get him to school because I'm not going to be able to drive for at least 6 weeks. So we've been FaceTiming a lot. And I mean, he has all the sympathy that you would expect from a 7-year-old. He just went, yeah, it sounds rubbish, Mum. Have I shown you my new Beyblade?
Yeah.
So, okay, moving on.
Yeah. Somebody once pointed out to me, children are fascists. They don't mean to be, but it's just how they do everything for themselves and want everything for themselves, and they don't give a damn about anyone else. That's just how children are programmed.
Yes, and his primary concern is just, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do in the summer holidays if you can't drive? How are you going to entertain me if you can't drive? So poor grandma has been roped in to help provide a chauffeuring experience.
That's the please and thank you, isn't it? That you, as parents, you relentlessly say to your children, say thank you, please, or say thank you to the nice person, or say please. And the reason for that is that you've got to basically drill into them that there is life beyond what they need, that you occasionally have to do something that is just purely for somebody else. And that's the first little part of that training, isn't it? Saying please and thank you.
Yeah, it is. But speaking of politeness and manners, there's been some drama going on, as always, on author social media that we were going to chat about briefly.
Yeah. I mean, I spotted this, and I hate these sort of things, but I think it's worth talking about just because it's kind of reader involvement, isn't it? Rather than author versus author. So this was an author. We think this is what there was somebody I follow is in the indie community, and he made a rather cryptic post, which is really, really annoying when people say that, saying, "Oh, I've got a secret," or "I hate it when one author really does that. I'm not going to say what it is, but I hate it." And everybody just replies saying, "What?" Anyway, he did that, but we did kind of work out that he was referring to an author who's had to leave social media. And I still don't really know what she said.
So, I mean, this is the thing that just blows my mind, is that from what I can figure out, so the author Ali Hazelwood, who writes romance, massively well-known romance author, apparently made a comment about being Team Gale. When I heard this, I didn't even know what that was. It's a character from the Hunger Games. And it just kicked off all this reader hatred and then kind of spiraled from there. And then people started taking issue with the way she represents neurodivergency in her books, even though she is neurodivergent. And then people started taking issue with the age gaps that she has in her book. Even they're like, I don't know, 15 years or something, which is pretty standard for romance books. And anyway, people got so nasty and vitriolic that she actually just left social media. She shut down her Instagram account. And everybody on Threads was obviously kind of getting involved, but I sort of noticed a bit of a turn. And I think that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I did notice that actually a lot more people this time were coming out and saying this is getting a bit ridiculous. Readers can't keep vilifying authors like this and making it a kind of witch hunt to take them down, because they're still people at the end of the day, especially over something like that. I mean, with everything that's going on in the world, pick your battles. But it seems to be happening more and more often at the moment, which is why I tend to try to stay away from Threads and a lot of the places where drama starts. But it just feels horrible. It feels horrible, especially when she's done nothing wrong.
Yeah. And from what I can remember about the Hunger Games, I have had to use ChatGPT to remind me exactly who Gale was, but I realised he's the childhood friend at the beginning who they sort of fake a relationship with to survive. And as things go on, it becomes more complicated. He is a lot more sort of militant in the way that he wants to operate, and not probably as politically savvy as he should be, and certainly as Katniss is. But he's not an out-and-out baddie, right? He's not. I mean, there are very few out-and-out baddies. I guess the guy with the big glove in Marvel, he didn't really have any redemption storyline, did he, whatever his name was? So he's not an out-and-out baddie, which means there is a discussion, right, to have about the various ways of doing the same thing. And it's a bit like how politics has become very polarized. Nobody, very few people say, I don't support you, but I'm interested in why you think that. People just say, oh, you're an idiot. And that's kind of what happens in modern discourse, which is depressing.
Yeah, and it's like it's a fictional character. It's a fictional thing. It's just I just don't really understand it. It's all that kind of behavior is just very confusing to me. And I've seen quite a lot of authors also posting things on TikTok and stuff recently, just reminding readers politely not to keep tagging authors in bad reviews, because we're just not always like, write them. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to like the book. That's not what we're saying. But being tagged in one, if you're not in the right mindset to read it that day, you don't really want to open Instagram or TikTok and the first thing you see is that you've been tagged in a review where they're absolutely tearing apart your book. But as I said, I have seen a bit of a shift, and I've seen people starting to be more vocal about this and saying, like, stand your ground and don't be afraid to post, because I've seen a lot of authors saying, I'm a bit scared to actually post anything these days because I feel like I'm going to get people tearing it apart. So I think we brought it up to kind of highlight that rather than to gossip or bring drama.
Yes, and I think it's you've got to sort of think outside the box here. Because if you say something like she made this joke, or sort of tongue-in-cheek jokey thing about being on Team Gale, then she gets a lot of people taking it very seriously and piling in on her. Now, the natural reaction to that is, I've made a huge mistake. I was just making a joke. People don't get it. This is bad for me and bad for my career. An outside the box way of thinking about it is there's nothing bad about this attention. I mean, it's just a kind of the whole thing's a bit of a joke, and some people want to take it seriously. They are just going to look slightly idiotic to the outside world, and people are going to look at what I've posted and think that's not that unreasonable, which is the truth. That's the kind of factual, or close to factual you're going to get here, that situation. And as you say, just press on, just completely go along with it and say, well, you're entitled to your view. I'm still Team Gale, and I might get some T-shirts. I'm going to get some tea towels printed. Would you like one? Sort of take that attitude with it, and all that focus and all that attention. A lot of people will know the name Ali. So Ali, who is it? Just so people
Ali
will know the name
Hazelwood.
I've just forgotten. Ali Hazelwood. A lot of people will know the name Ali Hazelwood. Sorry, Ali, if you're listening, who didn't know it before. And so there's an outside the box way of looking at this. And maybe that's what we need to be prepared for those occasions. And it's not a nice feeling. I know I've been with friends who've been in the center of these storms. Not a nice feeling. It's very panicky. You don't sleep. But actually, if we could just think, first of all, it's not real, what happens on social media. Second of all, the bits that will impact real life might be positive for you, even if it doesn't feel like that at this stage, which includes book sales.
Yeah, and it will blow over. These things do blow over relatively quickly. Like you said, at the time, it's horrible when it's happening, and it can feel, because we're humans. So, our nervous system goes into like total panic when we feel under attack. If you, like you said, if you can kind of ride through it, then they'll be onto something else within a few days or weeks or whatever. And just to remember that it's a little tiny kind of sample of people. They might be very loud, but they don't represent all readers everywhere. Most readers are absolutely lovely and don't get involved in this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, look, we're going to talk about kind of writing environment that you set up for yourself to be as productive and as healthy as possible and get the best out of your writing. And we've been talking to some people and doing some research on the different ways people get to that kind of flow state, or whatever you want to call it. Before then, I do have a question for you, actually. I just remembered. In one of the storylines I'm writing, and I think this is the first time I've done that in my 4 books, is because I write them in the 60s and they're military officers, let me just say it. There's a black character. I'm writing a black character. So he's one of the, I have to research this because my books are as authentic as possible, one of the early special agents in the FBI who was black. So they started incredibly late, actually. It's like 63, 61, 62, something like that. And this is 1963. So this guy is one of the early guys. And first of all, I have not made him black for any particular reason. It's just, I thought that would be an interesting dynamic in that environment, in the civil rights going on in the States at that time. But this is New York, so it's a bit more cosmopolitan. And basically, he's a character who's in a back office because he's just got to do his time doing a really boring job before he gets out on the streets. And he hasn't done anything wrong, and it's not because he's black or anything like that. It's just almost coincidence. But because I'm writing it and, you just write, I found myself having these moments where almost everyone he meets and gets partnered with has to say something to him because it's the first time they've worked with a black special agent FBI guy. So he sort of, in his internal dialogue, he knows at some point they're going to ask him what it's like. What's it been like for you? He knows the same question comes, people just say it in a different way. And he gets both a bit fed up with it, but at the same time understands why people might want to ask it. And so he's polite back, although he does with an agent he's paired up with for the main investigation, he does sort of push back at him a little bit and said, well, I've only been asked it 9 times this month, so let me answer it one more time for you. And the guy laughs and realizes how stupid it sounded. And now I think for my audience, they probably won't bat an eyelid. But I'm thinking, is there a wider audience? I'm thinking of other authors who will be scrutinizing the way that a white, middle class, let's face it, guy in England writes a black American in the 1960s, and whether I'm opening myself up here for some trouble.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking, I was thinking actually there's a course which has been recommended to me recently, which is Alex Tembler, I think is their name, and it's called Writing an Identity Not Your Own, and it's only about $100. My sister has taken it, and I've bought it, but I haven't actually taken it yet. And they also have a book, and I think from what I feel and gather, the best thing we can do is at least try to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And there's a lot of really, I don't feel qualified to talk about it, but there's a lot of really good information in that course on just how to go about it and things that might not even occur to us because it's not our lived experience, because we're not that person. So I would recommend to anybody that because a lot of people say, but if you're writing fantasy or if you're writing, something, because yours is obviously based on fact a lot more than something like a supernatural romance or something like that. A lot of people say, well, you don't really need to worry about it if you're writing fantasy. But I think we are at a point where as writers, we have to take that responsibility to make sure that we are doing the best that we can do to represent those characters in the best way. So I would recommend having a look at her book and the course, because obviously you've got to it's also difficult for you because you're writing historically, so the attitudes at the time that you were writing, you've got to reflect those. So that's not a case of you writing how you would write it now. So it's a tricky one. It's definitely a tricky one. And you can get what do you call it, you can get readers who will read specifically for that sort of thing for you.
Okay,
but
that's what I really want, I think.
Do the course.
Yeah, what I don't want to do is to go to a friend who is black and say, well, is this okay? Because I feel that's almost kind of borderline racist anyway, just assuming somebody, they may not spend any moment in their life thinking about this, and I'm just assuming that they will know that, and I don't want to fall into that cliche. So I definitely want to reach out to black friends and say, can you read this, assuming that they'll have a view on it. But if there's people set up in advance for that kind of read, that would be of interest to me.
I've forgotten I don't want to not
it's
do it. It's totally gone from my head.
Yeah, I don't want to not do it because, you get accused of not having representation in your books, and then you can be accused of misrepresenting, and it is bloody fraught, the whole thing, isn't it? But for me, I grew up fascinated with America during that period. The whole MLK movement, the civil rights movement, the Kennedys, everything like that. And that's what I always write, stuff that I'm fascinated with and love. That's why Apollo gets mentioned a lot in my books and stuff. So I don't want to not have an aspect of this, but it's a kind of tangential, adjacent, I think is the word they use, adjacent to it. Somebody who's actually miles away from it, but refers back to, I have said at one point, this would be something that they're standing in a queue and his partner, who's white, not his partner, but an early partner who's not a great character, is leering over a woman ahead who's obviously white and got ginger hair and big boobs, and he says, look at those missiles or something, a nice little Cold War sort of type of language. And he's embarrassed. Yeah, it's deliberately, he's a gauche character. He's embarrassed by it. And then in some internal dialogue, he also reflects on the fact that he wouldn't have expressed sexual interest in a white woman because people have been killed for less, which is true.
Yeah,
in other parts of the
and I think
probably in the South, but that seems
if we shy away from I think if we shy away from writing it because we're scared of getting into trouble because we do something wrong, then that's just avoiding any responsibility or any kind of trying to actually address the issue of representation. So the best thing that we can do is to do the research and make sure that we are doing the best that we can to do it in the right way. And I think the point is, a lot of the time we might not even be aware that we've done something or written something or been insensitive or we might just be so blind to it because it's not part of our experience. So I think that's the main thing. But I've heard really good things about the course and the book.
Okay.
And it's not sensitivity readers. It's something. Yes, that's the one. It's not sensitivity readers. It's something else. And the term has completely gone from my head. But you can get beta readers whose specific job is to help you by going through your manuscript. And I think some authors actually feel a bit nervous about doing that because they feel like they're opening themselves up to somebody being like, you've done this wrong. You shouldn't have done it like this. But I think actually the fact that you're trying and the fact that you're doing the work to make sure that it's the best that it can be is a good thing. So I don't think we should shy away from it just because we're scared.
No, because you just end up with a benign, middle of the road book then instead of doing what you want to do. Okay, good. Thank you. That's my question for the day. And I've now basically alerted everybody in the world that I've got a black character in my book. So people will now, if they want to tear me apart and find a reason to bring me down, they'll find it in there, probably.
But I think the fact that you're even having, a lot of people wouldn't even flinch or think about trying to write that the the right way, or whether it's okay that they write it, or how they go about that. So I think by having that kind of dialogue and taking some steps to make sure that you're doing it right, you're already doing the right thing by.
Hopefully. Okay, let's talk about writing. So let's talk about the actual environment that you create for yourself for writing. I'm very much a laptop on my lap. First thing in the morning is when I do my best writing. And I think I've said before, once the day gets going, I very seldom return to my writing. I used to listen to Brain FM, but haven't done for a while, just because it's in the morning. I don't feel it's necessary because it's so quiet in the house. The dog's asleep next to me, and that's all fine. But I think during a busier time, I've definitely been I've benefited from Brain FM, and I do use it for other deep work. How about you?
Yeah, I used to use Brain FM a lot, actually. And if people haven't heard of it, you can choose different types of tracks, but they're supposed to be the sort of music that's designed to help you focus. And I think because last week we were talking about slow productivity, and we had quite a lot of comments actually from people saying they really loved that episode and it was really useful. So it's kind of trying to think about how we can hack our brains so that when we are doing that focus, that deep focus for a limited amount of time, we really can get into the zone. Something that I do, and one of our patrons said this as well, I can't remember who it was M, said that they listen to quite immersive soundtracks, so video game soundtracks, things without lyrics, things like, and I'll do this as well, if there's a scene that's in a jungle and it's raining, I'll look up like jungle raining sounds on YouTube or on Spotify and try and kind of immerse myself in that scene. And I tend to have a certain kind of rota or playlist of tracks that I'll associate with one particular book, because as you kind of get into the book, it's telling your brain it's writing time now. So if you always have that similar type of music, whether it's Brain FM or a particular soundtrack or whatever it is, when I do writing sprints with Sacha Black, we have one particular song that we put on, and as soon as that music starts in the warm up, there's about a 6-second bit at the beginning of the track where it's just warming up. It's like you can kind of feel it switch on. You can feel your brain go, oh my God, we're about to do a writing sprint, because we've always used that track when we sprint. We just have it on repeat. So I think music is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your brain to help you. You just have to find the right type of music, because for some people it needs to just be white noise. Some people are absolutely cool with lyrics, but I can't do lyrics.
I can't. I know quite a few people who listen to quite heavy metal stuff when they're writing. That absolutely, I can't. If I put on music, even when I'm working during the day, if I'm doing like the accounts, I know for an hour I'm going to do the accounts, and I put on an album, I find I'm just not listening to it. It may as well not be on. So when I'm working, I think it's because I respect music. I like to listen to it, not just have it running elevator stuff in the background. But yeah, the sort of white noise I definitely have enjoyed. It's interesting you're talking about like the rainy sort of soundscape. And I'm wondering now, like for instance, writing scenes in New York City, if I listen to a looping track of city noises, whether that would get me in the mood and make it easier for the dialogue to happen against the background of the real noise. I bet it would.
Yeah, I think it really does. And there's also things like you can think there's like hours and hours and hours of New York Public Library or something, just
Right.
library sounds. So you literally just hear people like using the photocopier, taking books out, like very, 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 very quiet, occasional chatter. Or you can get coffee shop sounds. Like there's a soundscape for pretty much anything. So I've started to do this even scene by scene. Like if I have a scene where they're by a campfire, by a river, you can find a soundtrack that is a campfire by a river, and it really does help to put you kind of in that place.
And do you look on YouTube for these mainly, or Spotify?
Yes, most of the time YouTube. Yeah, that I found there's some on Spotify, but I find YouTube the best, and they'll just be kind of looping tracks with sometimes they've got a video image, so you might actually have the video of New York City street, or sometimes it will just be a static picture with the sound in the background. But yeah, I would like you to try it and then tell us next time if it helps.
Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow morning. That's interesting. So I mean, there's I was flying yesterday and tired. We got up early every day on this holiday in inverted commas, so didn't get a lot of sleep, and then started drinking in the afternoon. So That's how that went. And on the way back, I thought I'm just going to have to sleep for a bit. And I put on, there's an Enya album called Dark Sky Island, which I love, but I now use it to sleep. I put it on my headphones, my comfy, nicer headphones than this. And if I put it on now to work, I would be like this on the desk. I mean, the strong association, because I've trained myself and set that environment, that environmental response for me is sleeping on a plane or sleeping somewhere. So that means what I'm saying, I suppose, is you could use different soundtracks to prompt to get yourself in that different mental space, different types of noises to do that. So I will try that and see how that goes.
Yeah, because our brains are very, people, if you think about when you used to set exams, I don't know, sit exams, I don't know if you ever had this sort of thing, people would say stuff like chew a certain sweet beforehand, or have a certain drink, or have a certain smell, or have something that you always associate with studying, because then when you get into the exam, if you chew that sweet before you go into the exam, it will help your brain to remember all that stuff. So I think it's a similar thing. Like if we can develop a ritual of some kind, if that involves a certain place in your house, or you always have a certain type of tea, or you always listen to a certain song before you start writing, I think particularly if you're pressed for time, and you think, okay, I've only got a block of 15 or 20 minutes. I can't afford to sit here and not be in the zone and take my time warming up. If you can get into that habit of having something that tells your brain this is writing time, you'll find that you get into the zone much more quicker, much quicker,
Yeah. Much more
much more
quickly.
quicker.
Quicker, yeah. Much
Yeah,
quicker.
something like that.
Yeah. It all works, doesn't it?
It all works.
Okay. So that is rituals signal to the brain. So get into the same rituals, and habit stacking is the other expression. Is it pairing writing with an existing routine to build consistency? Which I think a lot of us end up doing just almost without trying. You just end up writing in the same way each day, realizing that works for you. Writing techniques. I mean, I personally should be better at this. I mean, I have my little, not Pomodoro, but my little clock with an alarm on it, and set my writing sprints, but I don't use it. What I do is I sit down in the morning and I write for as long as I can before I basically have to stop writing and start my day. And I probably end up writing for about 40 minutes in the morning. And the other reason I stop writing is because I can only write for about 40 minutes in one go. And I find it quite difficult. I kind of want to stop and have a break at that point. But I think if I did 2 25-minute sprints with 5 minutes in between, I'd be more productive and get something done. So maybe that's something else I could try. Along with the cityscape tomorrow morning, I could aim to do 2 25-minute or even 2 20-minute stints rather than one.
Yeah, because I think the Pomodoro technique was developed as a productivity tip for working in general, wasn't it? For getting any tasks done, not just writing. And the idea is that you work for 25 minutes and you literally set a timer, and you can get various apps, you can get literal Pomodoro timers, and then you have a 5-minute break and you do something in that you actually have a break. Like you get up from your desk, you walk around, you do a game on your phone, you do a puzzle, you actually do take a break. You don't just sit there for 5 minutes waiting for the next bit to start. So it's kind of similar to writing sprints, but I think sprints differ a little bit because we tend to do them, we can do them alone, but a lot of us do them with partners or with other people, don't we? For the kind of accountability.
Well, I think you do. I have been through those phases in the past, but I think a lot of us most of the time work alone and don't do sprints with other people. But that is another thing, isn't it, for sprinting, is to think about finding a partner who you can just sit on a Zoom call with and do sprints together can make all the difference.
Yeah, and with sprints, something that I started doing was sprinting to a word count instead of for a time, because I write quite quickly. And I started doing this with Sasha because we both write quite quickly and we both like that kind of game sort of element of competition. So we sprint to 1,000 words to see how quickly we can write the 1,000 words, rather than sprinting for, say, I'm going to sprint for 10 minutes or I'm going to sprint for 30 minutes. So there's 2 ways that you can do that. You can sprint with a word count goal, or you can sprint with a time goal.
Do you do that competitively with Sasha then?
Yeah. Yeah, we do it in there's a program called Write, where you can have like a room and everyone, you can't see what each other are writing, but you're writing in there and you get little stars for every 100 words, and you can see how quickly you do it. And I think the fastest we've done 1,000 words is in about 13 minutes when we're in the zone.
In the flow. And there's a few of these, isn't there? But there's another one. So Talia actually demonstrated it in London a couple of weeks ago, the game where you get rewards and points and kill monsters. What is that called? You have to write within it, though. People will be screaming at it.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, you kill zombies and you do all sorts of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you don't, you have to write within it and then copy and paste into something after. Because I do write in, well, at the moment, funnily enough, I write in Scrivener. I draft in Scrivener, but I'm writing in Word because I'm revising an existing book. So it's a little bit different. I could easily probably do that, but I've never tried that. And I am a gamer. So I grew up, been playing video games since I was a kid. So that might be one that I should try. Yeah, the sort of task sprinting rather than time sprinting is an interesting one. I've never done that. I've always been not really sure what I'm going to be doing in this session, just starting where I was and writing for 25 minutes, but thinking I'm going to do this chapter. I'm going to get 1,000 words done or whatever. Ending it with a task is an interesting way of thinking about it. Okay. Do you use any distraction blockers?
No, I don't. But I did buy a Remarkable tablet, which I really, really love, and especially with the warm weather. So it's an e-ink screen, and it now comes with a keyboard. And I think you possibly can get into a browser on there somewhere, but it's a bit like the Kindle. There's no easy way to do it. So if I really want to not have any other distractions, I will write on that. And especially if you're going somewhere, if you're going to a cafe, or if you're writing outside in this weather, the e-ink makes that really easy. But I've never used any of the things that you put on your laptop or your phone or anything like that, because I have got willpower. Like when I decide that I'm going to sit and do something, I'm quite good at not allowing other things to creep in and distract me. But I think if you know that that is something you struggle with, if you know that your brain is going to wander and you're going to want to check Facebook and you're going to want to check your WhatsApp messages, then definitely worth trying.
Yeah. I know one of my writer friends took all social media. They only put social media on their phones. So their rule is they only go on their phones. So if they write on a desktop or, a laptop or whatever. And so they're not tempted to go across to us. Actually, one thing I need to do is I need to close down Slack and emails on my laptop the night before. It's very hard for me to open it in the morning and see some bold stuff which is unread and ignore that and start writing. And even if I do ignore it and start writing, it's just playing in the back of my mind and probably negatively affects my mindset for the writing and how long I'm going to spend writing. So I think that's a good tip I can give myself, is to clear everything down. So when I open my laptop in the morning, it's just the Word document. And you can if you're writing in Scrivener, you can put Scrivener in full screen mode anyway, which covers everything else. And maybe put the do not disturb. If you've got Apple or Android, I'm sure has the same thing you can do. You can time your do not disturb, so when it starts showing you notifications to later in the day, maybe after 10 o'clock in the morning, so that you know your maximum chance of focusing just on your writing for those first couple of hours.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I did a while ago was I took the Apple Mail thing off my phone for emails and off my laptop. So I have to go into Gmail to check my emails, or I have to go into something else, whatever application emails are with, I have to physically go into them to check my emails. Because I was the same. I was getting the little digits come up, the unread messages, last thing before bed, first thing in the morning. And it's hard to ignore them if you know that they're there. I think I said last week, nothing terrible is going to happen if you don't check that email until after lunch. So I just don't go into them. I don't physically go into my emails until, and I think I did it when I went on a holiday once. I think that was why I did it, because I thought if I've still got my emails popping up on my phone every day, I'm not going to switch off. And then it just made me feel so much better that I just left them off there.
Yeah, nice. I mean, that also does explain why you never respond to any cara@indiewritersclub.com emails.
Yeah, it does, because I don't check it that often. And has anything terrible ever happened?
No, I just have to use the other one. You got away with not doing stuff. Nice. I should do it. I have loads of email accounts. I've got 10 different email accounts, and I get 100 emails a day. And I do have to be a bit careful about leaving it completely, because that can be having 1,000 unread emails, even though most of them are just Meta notifications, PayPal notifications, whatever. You can just have ways of en masse sort of marking them as read. But what I don't really want to do is spend half a day doing that when I start when I come back off holiday. So there's a balance, and there's nothing wrong with doing some work on holiday if you know that's going to make you feel more relaxed. And that is the case with me. I'd rather spend half an hour in the morning keeping on top of that and then go out and, forget everything for the rest of the day because I know that there's nothing urgent waiting for me.
Yeah, I agree. Do you ever watch telly while you're writing? Do you ever have the TV on in the background? No.
I can't think of a time I've done that. Possibly the only time I would have done that is if there's a sporting event on live that I would have on mute, like a test match or the tennis at Wimbledon. I might put the tennis on, I guess, and write with it on mute that I wouldn't have any sound on it.
Because I know some people, especially...
What other telly would you have on?
Well, I think if you're neurodivergent, some people, it actually helps if you have, I've heard people say that they have to put on a show that they've watched a million times before. So like maybe Grey's Anatomy or something that they've just binge watched a million times. So they're not really watching it, but they need that kind of level of external noise going on in order to focus. So I think if that's something that works for you, don't feel bad about it. Because I think a few of us would probably feel like, oh God, I can't write with the telly on because that means I'm not a proper writer, because nobody would sit and do that. But if that works for you and helps you be more productive, then do it.
Okay. I mean, I can't imagine that would work for me, but it seems weird. I think most people probably find it odd having Grey's Anatomy or any TV, however many times you watched it on while you're trying to write. But it's that neurodivergency thing, isn't it? There's some people's brains just work differently, and you've got to work out what works for you, which also is like the next few points that we've got in our notes here, which is your biology, which comes into it. Does your biology come into it? Do you think there's better times of the day when you're going to be more focused?
I think there are times of the month. So I know other female authors who look at their hormones, and I know that probably sounds a bit ridiculous to a bloke, but I legitimately know that there are different times depending on my hormones where I can't be editing or I can't be drafting because I'll be like, my brain's not in the right place. So I definitely take that into account when I'm actually planning, like at what point I'm going to be in a drafting phase. And I try to avoid certain times where I just know that I won't be in the right headspace and I'll just end up having to redo it. I'm not sure that time of day has ever really mattered to me. I think to me, environment is more important. So I need to have a kind of clear house. Like I find it much harder to write when my son is here because I feel like part of my brain is in mum mode and constantly listening for him, and I don't want to put my noise cancelling headphones on because I've got to be aware of if he's here. Whereas if I've got, the house to myself, nobody here, I find that much easier to focus.
Okay, well, I think that's interesting. I mean, there's definitely, we all go through sort of highs and lows, and we'll go through sometimes external reasons, sometimes unexplainably, you're low on energy and feeling a bit down during periods. And I certainly know, and I'm married and I've got enough girlfriends to know that the month cycle 100% for some women is very predictably, an irritable couple of days. Have been on the wrong side of that a couple of times, of course, as every man. But that, I suppose, means it's just kind of an awareness thing. You think, I'm going to do some admin. I mean, there's always admin to do. There's marketing. There's stuff that doesn't require the creativity side of it. And by the way, it might not be a block to your creativity, but I think for all of those mood changes, men and women, you have some things on hold that you think, yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'm feeling really bloody annoyed today. So I'm just going to get all my accounts done or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's a focus thing sometimes as well. Like anytime that I've ever had an accident in my car where I've like scraped it, bumped it, anything like that, it has always been at a certain time of the month because my brain does not focus the same way. So I know that I just need to avoid that for something where I'm doing hard editing work because my brain isn't functioning the same. And we are in a position where we can actually take that sort of thing into account. And I know that there are some, big kind of modern companies now that actually are allowing women to kind of frame their working day around that sort of stuff. But it's like, if you're an indie author, if you've got the opportunity to plan when you can do stuff, then do it. And the same with anything. Like if you suffer from seasonal affective disorder, or if you know that just like you said, there are multiple things that can affect us. So it's just kind of trying to pay attention to patterns and what is going to work better for you.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, next time you offer me a lift, we're going to have a hell of an awkward conversation first, aren't we? I'm going to have to ask you.
It's going to be a while.
Jesus.
I can't drive for at least 6 weeks.
No, but I mean, seriously, I can remember. I can remember my wife being pregnant and having, they call it preg head, don't they? 100% became, through periods of pregnancy, quite incompetent at some things. So she was aware of that as well.
James, you're in dangerous territory.
I know I am, but I'm going to say it anyway. I can remember that period and a kind of preg head, like going to the shops and then coming back with one of the bags, not two of them. And it does affect you. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Final thing I think we've got here is the emotional and psychological tips. Some of these are sort of slightly different ways of looking at how you set yourself goals and standards that you don't necessarily need to set. Like, for instance, writing just for the sake of it, even if it's crap, is a good thing.
Yeah, and that's something I've had to do this week because I was really struggling. Like, I've been in so much pain. My head has been foggy with painkillers, and I wasn't writing at all because I felt like I don't want to do it because might not be up to the same standard as normal. And this was a case where I just had to go a bit easy on myself, and more in terms of how much I thought I was going to get done, not necessarily the quality, but more like I've only managed about 1,000 words a day instead of my normal 6. So I just had to, be a bit kind to myself and go, actually, that's better than nothing. So if I've managed 1,000 words, that's good. So just being kinder to yourself and allowing it to be crap if it is going to be crap.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. We talked about gamifying word count goals and stickers and streaks and stuff, and there's some software that will help you do that. And yeah, a messy first drafts. So lots of amazing writers out there will tell you their first drafts are a wreck, a train wreck, and need repairing. So that's absolutely fine. And we know, I think particularly when you're new to writing, that's one that can catch you out. That feeling that this is terrible and it's awful, I can't write, and giving up. For writers who don't make writer friends and have this conversation. But the opposite is true. It's everybody's first draft is crap, is the famous quote from Ernest Hemingway. And it's completely normal for it to be a bit messy and not very good to start off with. That's just how it is. And so we need to be aware of that. But I think most people listening to this show probably know that bit. We've had that conversation enough as writers, but
I think so, but it's something that we can do with reminding ourselves after a while. Because I think when you've been doing it for a while, you're possibly even harder on yourself because you're like, hang on, I've been doing this for a while. It should be really, really good first time around. That's not always the case. So just actually giving yourself permission to write badly and literally say it out loud if you need to. Like, it doesn't matter if this isn't any good. Any words, you can fix it. You can fix it. So it's better to have some than none.
Well, I tell you what we could do. We could do thinking out loud here, which is the best way to do we do all our planning, just thinking out loud. It wouldn't be a bad thing, would it, for some point to organise some Zoom writing sprints in our community? So maybe people in our Patreon, if we post the Zoom link into our Patreon for paid subscribers, try and keep the numbers relatively manageable, then people can join over an hour period and we can do a couple of 25-minute sprints.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting because I think sometimes it's almost like the body doubling thing of just having other people writing at the same time as you can help, especially if you're trying to break through a period of writer's block or just like struggling to find the motivation to do it. It can really help. But it's one of those things where if you're just starting out and you don't know any other writers yet, or you haven't made those friends, it's really hard. And you think to yourself, well, how do I do that then? How do I find these people who I can sprint with?
Yeah, well, we can do that. I think it's one for after the show and after the retreat because I've got a very busy couple of weeks coming up ahead of me. But let's have a think about that. Good. And we should give our Patreon a plug. And we also need to welcome our new Patreons, which we'll do next week because I think there's been a couple new ones.
There have, yes, but I don't have the list with me, so we'll do that next time.
We'll do that next time. And of course, it is at indiewriterclub.com/support if you want to go and join that community. Okay, I don't know. I'm hoping that the air conditioning noise I've got in my background is being drowned out by the automatic filtering in this software, but I do apologise if you've heard this hum. In fact,
I can't hear it
it's the kind of white
at all.
noise you can write to. Oh, okay, yeah, it's probably been done then. So, yeah, but it is warm in the UK, and I basically live in a glass house in my garden, so it gets about 40 degrees in the afternoon if I don't put the air conditioning on. That's it.
that was fun. But my leg is starting to hurt from being at this weird angle sitting up. So
yes.
Yeah,
you need to go to your sofa. Yeah. All right, I completely understand that. Have a good rest of the day, Cara. We will probably record another one this week to give me some other focus in the next couple of weeks as we get up to the conference, or next week's the conference. And that's it. And we'll see you all in London, hopefully. Bye-bye.
All right, see you soon. Bye.
Support the podcast and get exclusive access by joining our Patreon. From just $1 an episode, you'll be invited to our Discord server, where the weekly discussion continues every day. And our 2 top tiers include a monthly live Q&A with James and Cara. Head to indiewritersclub.com/support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. We'll see you next Friday.
The Indie Writers Club podcast is sponsored by Pro Writing Aid. Built by writers for writers, Pro Writing Aid doesn't just check spelling and grammar. It helps you enhance your story's pacing, plot, characters, settings, and more. Now it can even provide on-demand developmental feedback on your entire manuscript with its manuscript analysis and virtual beta reader tools. Give your writing a competitive advantage by heading to prowritingaid.com. You can also sign up for free or use the code IWC15 for a 15% discount off annual subscriptions.